Your wife has great milk, though. She obviously has really good quality milk.
Okay, folks, this week we've got a special episode for you, a special two-parter. And today we're going to be diving deep into the world of shingles, not roof shingles, but shingles, the virus. And we've got two guests lined up for this episode to bring unique perspectives to the often misunderstood viral infection. In part one, we're going to be talking with our very good friend, Dr. Jia Samuel, best-selling author, psychologist, author of such amazing books like Grief Works and Every Family Has a Story. We're big fans, big collectors of Dr. Julia's books. And she's actually on the show to talk about her recent struggle with Ramsey Hunt syndrome. Julia opens up about the emotional toll that she's felt as a result of the rare facial paralysis. And of course, she dives into her views on the importance of resilience, when facing hardship like this. Now, following that conversation, we're actually going to be joined by a new friend, Dr. Jia Hu, Doctor Who, who breaks down the science behind shingles and discusses the crucial role of vaccination in prevention. And this is his specialty and study that he does when he's not traveling through space and time in a phone booth. So enjoy this conversation. We'll start it off with our very dear friend and repeat guest, Dr. Jia Samuel.
We know it was an itch that needed to be scratched for you. Yeah, here he is.
Look at you.
Good Lord.
Injured.
Ladies and gentlemen, fresh with his hospital
Have you
bracelet
got an
on.
ice on? Is he going to put ice on?
Hey.
It's too bad he's just faking. It's too bad he's just faking it, and he was really just distracted playing computer games, and this is the excuse he came up with.
Well, let's be mindful of time here. Brian, thanks for joining us.
I wouldn't do anything to miss
and
talking to Julia.
For folks that are just there, for folks that just happen to tune in the middle of this conversation right here, Brian, I guess we'll get this out of the way so that we don't have to make it about you for the entire conversation.
Right.
What did you do? Break your foot? What the fuck happened? You just you have a hospital bracelet on. You walked in late, even though we didn't technically start the recording, but we're in it now. What's going on?
I don't know. I couldn't walk on my foot. I couldn't put any weight on my foot this morning, and it's been progressively getting worse for the last few days.
Right.
And,
okay. Well,
and they didn't give me any answers at the hospital, but they did give me an answer that it's not broken.
Okay.
So.
Well,
God bless universal healthcare.
Yeah.
Well, Julia can't feel half of her face, Brian. So do you feel like are you trying to one up or what? Like what the fuck's going on?
I think
here,
I'm
dude?
one downing her.
One downing me.
Julia, firstly, before we get into it, I have to say it, and I probably say it every time we have you on the show. Our all-time favorite guest.
All time.
We've had you on multiple times, folks. If you're not
I'm
familiar,
your granny guest.
You're the coolest
The
granny.
old bag guest. Now I'm the old bag with a fucked up face and broken shoulder guest.
Oh Jesus! Well, Julia,
you're our favorite bag.
You are. Regardless of your age or your face, you are our favorite guest, and we've been touting your books. We're massive fans of everything that you do, and so because we're fans, truly genuinely fans, outside of just the podcast, I was scrolling through Instagram and I swipe by and I see you on there, and you were talking about resiliency or something to that effect, and you were rocking a fucking sick eye patch, and I was like, man. I
still have it actually, but I'm not wearing it right now.
Yeah,
I wear it against the wind and the weather, so I don't get stuff in my eye.
Right. I was thinking, like, what is it October? What's going on? Like, I was looking at my phone and I was like, no, this is January or February. Like, what's?
It was a cool patch. It had
is she Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean? What's happening?
Then I thought, well, I don't know. Over in London, I don't know what. in England what
They're always ahead of the curve.
yeah,
when it
maybe
comes
there's
to
some sort
fashion.
of holiday that I didn't know about or
Oh.
something.
Can you hold 1 second? I have got such a cool new eye patch. I'm going to show
Yes,
you.
Oh my
please.
God, yes,
Yeah,
please,
yeah,
please.
absolutely. I hope it has a skull and crossbones.
That would be awesome.
I hope it says sick boy
Oh,
and it has
wow.
our old logo.
If it says sick boy, like the tattoo that you have on your ass,
yeah, dude.
which I
Yeah.
have long since forgotten that you have that on your ass.
It's faded
it's
quite a
faded?
bit. Yeah, because of all that butt fucking that I've been doing.
Huh.
We're gonna have to cut that out, maybe. I don't know. We might have to cut that out. I don't want people to know
Well,
about my personal life.
you'll probably forget to cut it out, and now they know.
This is good vamping, guys. Typically, vamping is like it's kind of a nuisance,
Annoying.
but this is
Vamping can be
nice.
tough. Yeah.
Okay, here we
Here
go.
we go.
Oh, hell yeah!
Hell yeah.
Oh my God! It's like you're like a spice girl, ready to.
She went from
ready to-
old bag to Cougar Town.
That's it.
Old bag with a leopard skin patch.
I love that. So okay, let's stop beating around the bush. What the fuck? What happened, Julia? I mean, typically we have you on here to talk about resiliency and grief and dealing with families but now we actually get to have you on the podcast like all the other regular folks that we typically do. So what's
Broken
going on?
and busted. So what happened was that I was with my daughter and grandchildren skiing, and the first morning on just before going to coffee, like often happens, I slipped on a piece of ice. It was quite icy in northern France this year, and it must have been the sort of one of those sliding door moments, because I fell on a piece of ice and I broke my shoulder in 4 places.
Ooh.
So I really mullered my shoulder, and I had an operation that evening, and I came back about 4 days later, and then a surgeon here looked at the scan, and he said, that orthopedic surgeon, I don't know how he left you on the table. He's left 2 bits of your bone out. He's put the screws in wrong.
Oh my
no.
And so I was just dealing with having to have a revision operation and probably a replacement shoulder.
Oh.
When the trauma of the fall meant I got this very rare virus called Ramsey Hunt syndrome, which is 5 in 100,000 people get it.
Yes.
And it's a type of shingles, and you get it in your ear. So it completely knocked out my facial nerve, so that my eye doesn't blink. I don't kind of, all this side of my mouth, with having it was really awful, because it's like for about 10 days, it was like this burning pain in your ear and down my throat and in my mouth. It's like having chicken pox on the left side of my face. It was extremely unpleasant, plus all my shoulder stuff. And then I had to have another 5-hour operation on my shoulder.
Oh my goodness.
And the shoulder it'll take 18 months, but it's predictable. And I think what's really difficult about the Ramsey Hunt is that it is so, my face, is it just that not seeing myself. And still now, I think it's 3 months since I had it. Every morning I kind of wake up thinking, oh, maybe I'll get my face back. And I think that's what happens with injuries, isn't it? That it takes you a long time to really accept that this is what you're going to look like. And I mean, I hope I recover, but there's nothing that they can say except for the sooner you recover, the more likely you are to recover. And I have small signs of recovery, but they're very small and very, very, very slow.
Oh my God.
I mean, so for folks that, I mean, when you hear the word Ramsey Hunt,
Justin Bieber.
Justin Bieber comes to mind for a lot of folks over here, and I guess probably all over the world, because very famously he had to like cancel his tour. But outside of that, I don't think many people know much about Ramsey Hunt, and actually to that point, I don't think many people know a whole lot about shingles. And Taylor and I actually had a conversation with a doctor who
Public health
official who knows quite a bit about shingles, and it was like, we did this like little pop quiz of how much we knew about shingles. And I mean, we really butchered it. Like, we really didn't know a whole lot. There was like the link between chickenpox and shingles.
It's the cell that's sort of silent in your body. Isn't it?
Yeah. And then like whether it's contagious or not, which it's not.
I think the public health doctor actually said that I could have taken his place in explaining shingles, because I thought I knew nothing, and then I explained what I knew, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you kind of got it."
Well,
That's pretty much it.
one of the interesting parts here, I'll just throw a little stat. So again, so shingles, so Ramsey Hunt, what you are dealing with, Julia, is a result of shingles that if you get shingles on your face and it attacks the nerve in your face, it can result in Ramsey Hunt, which is like similar to like a Bell's palsy.
But with much worse outcomes.
Yeah, each year, 130,000 Canadians are diagnosed with shingles. Okay, 17,000 reports of what's called post-therapeutic neuralgia, and 20 deaths, which means that right now, 356 Canadians will be told they have shingles. Now, you could have shingles on your thigh or your elbow or your belly, and typically you're not going to really have much issue other than the massive pain in the ass that it is.
Yeah.
But if you're someone like yourself, very rarely, if you get it near the face, it ends up resulting in this loss of feeling to the nerves in your face. So I know a lot of people are just listening. Maybe they're not seeing right now, but can you walk us through, like, when this started to come on, how did it feel? What was happening? How was it presenting itself? And specifically, like, where does it have this effect on you?
I mean, so the first sign I had was I had a few spots on my face, and I just thought it was stress from, kind of from the accident, because I don't really get spots. And then I had quite a bad earache, and a friend of mine, I never go to the doctor because I'm old-fashioned English, like, you shouldn't bother doctors until you're dying, and then it's too late. And this friend of mine forced me to ring the doctor, and he diagnosed straight away that it was shingles. And then I had a terrible night that night when the pain, I really didn't know what to do with the pain. And so I asked him for another appointment the next morning. And it's amazing that he diagnosed Ramsey Hunt, because it is so rare that it doesn't present very often. And so I was very lucky that he diagnosed it straight away, because the best treatment and best likelihood for my positive outcome is that you get this high dose of steroids and antiviral straight away, which I did. The thing I would suggest to people is that if you're kind of over, so most people who get shingles are over 60, but here in the UK, and I imagine in Canada, you can get a shingles vaccine. Here it costs £500. I don't know how it works. And
Wow.
If you're 70 in the UK, you can get it for free. And so nearly everybody I know has got the vaccine. So the first sort of week was really painful, and it's like my face was really, really hot. And I slowly kind of realized that my eye wasn't blinking, and that I had a very dry mouth, and I couldn't chew on the side of my mouth, and I dribbled. And it just feels sort of slightly humiliating that you lose what you can do. But I was also extremely lucky that it didn't affect my hearing, which it can do. And it didn't affect my balance, which it can do.
That's right. Yeah, like the whole
In a
similar to like
nerve
vertigo. Yeah, right.
And so I was really lucky like that. And I sort of feel both. I cried a lot. I'm a crier anyway. So
Me
after
too.
I'd had the second operation and I was on massive doses of painkillers and massive doses of steroids, I literally cried about every hour. But although I cried, I didn't actually feel sorry for myself, because I felt that I was lucky, and I do feel like I'm lucky. Like, I'm lucky that I could go to a doctor straight away. I'm lucky that I have my family who really looked after me, and my kids and my husband actually. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't wash myself. I couldn't really feed myself. I couldn't lift anything. I couldn't do anything. And they did a rota to come and look after me. And so I felt lucky and loved and relieved that I could walk and talk and move my body and that, I'm safe and it's not life threatening. And
Mm,
I also felt unbelievably sad.
mm,
Is there? I'm curious about. You spoke to it a little bit when you mentioned, the sort of desire or thought of waking up each morning and thinking like, is this the day where like I recognize myself again?
mm.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you've obviously done a lot of work in your career and in your life around grief, and I suppose something like this in some form happens to everybody as we age at some point where things start to change and our identity feels like it's changing as well. I'm wondering how you felt, what kind of experience of grief you may have undergone in this experience, and any sense of like shifting identity.
Yeah, I really have felt grief. I mean, in that book, This Too Shall Pass, which you're always so kind about, I talk about that as a living loss.
Mhm.
So it's all the emotions of grief that often aren't kind of acknowledged, but feel like grief, adapting. And so it's really strange because literally I have a two-hander. On the one hand, I still like I feel really happy talking to you, really confident talking to you. And there are other situations or people I'm with that my confidence is completely evaporated, and I feel like a sort of slightly broken, kind of idiotic child. So I went to a big conference where I did a masterclass this week on Sunday and Monday. Um, and these are all kind of titans of industry and super kind of fit and in their 40s. And that made me feel broken and useless. But if I'm like with you,
With us lowly peasants.
That's actually surprisingly, that's a really nice compliment.
I feel safe, and so I feel I can be myself, and I don't feel
Mm,
useless.
mhm.
And when people are too nice to me and they gush all over me, or I find that unbearable. I
Yeah.
just find that unbearable. And when that voice changes and the head goes on the side, oh, darling, I just don't know how you're coping. I literally want to punch their lights out. And I know that
Mhm, mhm.
they mean well, but I cannot stand it. I
Yeah.
absolutely can't stand it. And then the other thing I find really difficult is when people see me for the first time and they kind of have a look of shock on their face. And then they say, "Gosh, how are you coping?" And I say, "I'm fine." It's sort of, I'm English. I say, "I'm fine." And then, and then they say, "Well, gosh, when are you going to get better?" And I say, "I don't know." So the recovery thing becomes like a tyranny. Like,
Yeah.
when are you going to get better? What's the thing? And then when you can't give them something, they don't know what to do because they can't say, "Well, that's great. You'll be better by whatever." And then you kind of feel them sinking, and also I feel them retreating, want to walk away from me, like it's catching or something, or that
Mm,
somehow I'm failing in the mending business.
Isn't that
mhm,
true? Like
mm.
that feels like those things feel so familiar to hear people say, when anything bad happens. And I was thinking about it, like I've had a few experiences in the last couple months where somebody close to me has told me some bad news about their own life, and I feel like I've more commonly now had that pause and like thought about what I'm about to say, but like right on the surface feels like that, that immediate reaction of like, oh, well,
Fix.
like I want to solve this, like I want to try to
Yeah,
fix this,
fix it.
or like, try to make this person more comfortable or be somebody different rather than just being like, oh, that fucking sucks.
When really it's
Yeah.
the
You know,
person
Mm.
that's
like,
saying it that needs to become more comfortable.
yeah, I mean, I think there's for sure discomfort with people in hearing bad news and they don't know how to respond and they
Mm-hmm.
don't know the things to say. It just, feels really difficult to be in that space. And I don't know, it is a very common experience. And I'm curious why is it so hard for us to just like sit with people in hard moments?
Being alongside. I mean, I think, well, I think emotions are contagious. There's my
Look
dog.
out! Look out! Oh my goodness! Jeez! Oh, what a wild boy! Oh my
Hello,
goodness! I was-
doggy.
Um,
Dogs are the best.
he
Bye, doggy.
For the folks
He-
just
he
listening, a
didn't
beautiful
care.
little lab just ran in and was so excited to see.
he thinks he's a
Julia.
horse.
Yeah, I mean, he lumbered in there like a horse.
Bob has been one of my greatest comforts, I have to say. Dogs at times like this, because they're not
Yeah,
Oh my
worried
God,
about
yeah.
you, and they're not
yeah.
shocked by you, and they're just so cheerful. I think one of the reasons is emotions are contagious, and so seeing me and me being upset or being different to how they're used to seeing me, presenting differently, and I think my voice slightly changes. Like where I've seen people at these big events, I'm not as confident, so my voice slightly
Yeah.
is kind of thinner or something, and I sound more vulnerable. I think people that transmits to other people, and then they want to somehow give me confidence, or they're shocked. And I think there is this kind of, like there is with death, this kind of magical thinking that this is catching, that we have to fix this, or it's bad for all of us. I think that,
Mm.
and also I think it is just instinctive kindness. Like it's a kind of compassion. Like I want you to be better, so tell me what you're doing so that I know that you can be better, so then I can encourage you to be better. I think it often really comes from a generous place.
Mm.
But I think a lot of it's fear, don't you?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I mean, it's, right. What Brian said, it's like you express that you've got something going on. And if a person doesn't present, somebody comes up to somebody and says, "Oh my God, what happened? What happened? How are you getting better? How are you progressing?" And if the person that's dealing with the thing doesn't, like lay out the plan and lay out the path, then people often just feel like they don't, they're like, oh, there's a question mark. There's not a clarity to how this is
Yeah.
going to improve. And that makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, maybe because generally when we don't have a clear path towards anything in life, that makes us feel uncomfortable.
Totally. It's like the emotional round, like square peg in the round hole. Like you're trying, like you can't fit this thing in and make sense of it. So it's just like, oh, well, now I don't know what to do with it. Like, what do I do with it now?
I mean, that's the entire reason why. I mean, it's a big part of what this whole show started
Is it
from,
bad?
but like
Of course.
it's the reason why I lean to humor and like self-deprecating humor when I was younger, was because I would run up against that with somebody else and I would notice, oh, they're uncomfortable. Well, I better make a
Deflect.
joke. I better make a joke about myself, like the fact that I'm dying, or the fact that I have only half of my face working right now, so that they see that, hey, this is okay.
Mm.
We can both be super, super calm and like okay with this, and you don't have to be afraid to talk about.
And
Jokes
it can
are the
just
best.
and it can
Feelings,
just
you know?
be a thing. It can be a thing with people. And I don't mean to be the guy that's like tying this to business, like some like LinkedIn influencer.
Fuck, here we go.
Ew, what
Yeah,
the
here we
fuck?
go.
But like if you're running a business, or you're like playing a team sport or something like that, like you learn skills to be able to take something that doesn't have an answer right now and just go, okay, I'm okay with that. I'm going to just table that, and that's fine. We can
Circle back
we can-
later.
we can come back to that.
Circle
later.
back. That is
Yeah.
a good LinkedIn word.
And like,
yes.
circle back is a great LinkedIn word.
Work
what-
synergy into
what-
this somehow.
Yes, that's right. But what can we do?
Mhm,
Because like we don't, because a person's interaction with you or anybody who is dealing with hard things does not have to 100% solely focus around the hardship that person is going through. Obviously, it's front and center for the person, and it's playing a big role in their life at the moment, but it's not the only thing
Mhm.
that's playing a role in their life. There's 1,000 other things, and especially for people that have known you, they know that there's other things in your life, and you can just table the thing that you don't have an answer to and move on to something that,
Ooh.
something
I
else.
agree. I mean, I think that's what's really interesting, is that of course, when someone's first seen me, they're gonna I look so weird, so they're gonna say something. But also, I think if they'd follow my lead, that would be easier. So if
Yeah.
it's just me and a great friend, then I'd probably open up and I'd tell them, more. But if I'm in a place that I don't feel is the right place to be talking, I change the subject. I want them to
Mm.
follow me and let me change the subject. If I say, and what's been happening with you, or, how are your children, or, I've just had a new grandchild, then I want them to follow me. And people don't always do that. They'll like hold on to the, yes, but tell me. And that I,
Mm.
and that I find quite uh, strange in a way.
Do you think
Mhm.
some of that comes from who you are and the work that you do? Because like one of the questions that I had coming into this was like, how hard is it to practice what you preach? Sometimes especially with what we do, like it's easy to sit here and talk about these types of conversations and stuff, but you know,
Totally,
when
so much harder.
when someone really close to me loses a partner or a family member or something, sometimes it's like it's really hard to remember this thing that you've been sort of
Preaching.
preaching to the world, and so for someone like yourself, like, yeah, do you find that hard sometimes because you're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to grief and change and hardship.
I mean, I really fucking hate being a patient. So I
Mm,
hate everything about being a patient, like most people do. I hate that I couldn't wear my clothes, that I had to wear special clothes with poppers and I wear tracksuit bottoms. And I hated that I was on medication and I felt weird all the time. I hated that my arm was in a sling. I hated that I didn't have a normal schedule, that I was doing things that I normally do. I hated that I looked different. I hated that I couldn't do anything for myself. I couldn't brush my hair. I couldn't clean my teeth. I literally hated everything about it.
mhm,
And I didn't really fight it. So, in the sense that I couldn't fight it. So, I did things that enabled me to feel more like me. I hated that I didn't feel like me. I felt like I walked through this door of absolute health where I was incredibly fit and having so
mm,
much fun and feeling like really on top of the world. Like I loved being with my family. I loved skiing and being strong and fit and competing with my daughter. She always won, but at least I was up behind her. But then I walked through a door from absolute strength to total weakness in a nanosecond.
mm,
And then I felt like I was this miasma of myself and that I was kind of left behind of myself, like I wasn't myself. And so so I let myself not be myself because I didn't have a choice. But I also did things that helped me feel like me. So I walked as much as I could. And I read interesting things. And actually, I started work like, a week after my second operation. I did a very big interview. Um, And work helped me because it was the thing, although my voice sounded funny and I looked strange, it was the thing where I could rely on what I knew and I could find a version of myself that was familiar to me.
mm.
And, I think some people felt I went to work too soon or, take time off. But, and I think people's recovery and how they feel is really unique. That for me, working is the savior.
Yeah,
And it isn't
yeah.
because 'cause I'm addicted to it. Well, maybe I am addicted to it, but even if I'm addicted to it, it kind of works for me. I felt more confident once I
Mm,
didn't overwork, I did less work, but it helped me feel like me, and I didn't want to lose all of who I was.
Mm.
mm.
Is it in terms of, because you mentioned confidence earlier too, does work give you this like sense of ownership where you feel like you can have that, do that thing that you excel at?
Yeah, totally. I
Mhm.
could step into that version of myself that and I probably wasn't as confident, but I very quickly became confident. I could hear that my voice wasn't right. Um, but I sort of, and I just didn't look at any of the videos or stuff that we did. I
Mm.
just let I have a really nice producer, and I let her do it. I didn't look at what I look like.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't look at the reels, um, and so that was really good. I
Mm.
don't
I
know
think it's
what you
a,
think about that. Would you say I'm not taking my own medicine? Would you say I'm ignoring the pain?
No, I mean, I think that again, it's like I think what really stood out was you said I fucking hated it, and I wasn't resisting it, and I think that that's like that is the perfect distilled sort of nugget that is discomfort.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, of course, fucking hate it. It's gonna suck. You know,
Yeah.
you lose a partner, it's gonna suck. You lose your job, that sucks. You know, you come down with a diagnosis of cancer. It's gonna fucking suck, and you're gonna hate every second of it. But also, by trying to push it away and by
You
trying to
can't
like
fight it.
resist it, you can't. You
Mm.
cannot fight it.
I think
So like lean into hating it, but also you gotta like you have to move through that that mud. You've got to move through that wasteland if you want to get to the other side. And by trying to push back and resist, it's going to take a lot longer to get across that territory.
yeah,
What
that's
you
that's
resist
that's
persists. Right?
Mm-hmm.
that's the like the and I've said this a bunch of times lately on the podcast, but like the biggest thing I've taken away from therapy in the last few years is
Mm.
that it's not but it's and you
Yeah.
can feel
Mhm.
multiple things at the same time. And so like I think of my feelings as like swamp water. I don't know if
swamp water, like when you mix all the pops together.
yeah. And like I think that therapy is like going out and trying to figure out which flavors are actually mixed into it. So you're trying to like figure out what flavors make up like the emotional soup.
Buddy, I can let me just step in for 1 second here.
Jared's a
Can we have
savant
something a
in this.
bit cheerier than
Yeah, you don't
swamp?
need to drink swamp water, brother.
Couldn't it be
Dr.
just
Pepper has
different
26
colours?
different flavors.
Yes, exactly.
It's made of 26 ingredients. I don't know what they are.
That's
I
right.
mean, who knows? Maybe there's more.
Just like our
but like
emotions.
26 flavors in Dr. Pepper. Just use it. It's delicious.
right,
Use
that's
Dr.
right,
Pepper.
Julia, something that you said that stood out to me was the finding a like version of you within this new like experience, because I think it's really easy. I think it's extremely easy when you go through something that, like, especially when it happens like on a moment's notice, when like you really from one day to the next you like cross over into this new
Yeah.
paradigm. It's very easy to go like, this isn't me, like none of this is me, and this is just, I don't feel like I'm myself in any way, shape, or form. And finding the version of you that's still there and just going, okay, well, I just have to embody this version of, when I got hit by a car and I broke my pelvis, I had to lay on the couch for like 2 months and do
Ugh.
nothing.
So
And like,
painful.
Sick.
and that was, and to me, I was like,
So many video
I was like,
games.
okay, well, this isn't me. Like, I don't sit around on the couch all day,
No.
but there's a version of me that loves watching movies and playing video games. So like, I'm going to just have to live in that version of myself
Embrace it. Yeah.
until something breaks and I can
Or
start
mends.
to find different
Mhm.
add
Mends
back
better.
the different iterations and versions of myself that
Yeah.
feel more complete. I took a lot from that, of finding the
Yes.
version of you that still persists in the face of this like new paradigm.
And I think that's right. And it sort of makes sense in the sense that the version of you that you can kind of hold on to enables you to hold on to the and bit, lets you manage the part of you that doesn't feel like you, that feels like a miasma, that feels in pain and sort of powerless,
Mm,
because you have enough agency over that version of you
mm,
that you can kind of allow both. Whereas I
Mhm.
think I really would have sunk completely unless I'd found a kind of work version of me that gave me more confidence, or gave me more me, or gave
Mhm.
me back some of me.
Do you think that this experience, like, how do you think this experience, especially the experience of like, of being so unfamiliar with being the patient and really, just detesting that experience. When you come out on the other end of
I'm
this,
not proud of that, by the way. I'd like to be.
I mean, it
able to
makes
say,
sense. Yeah, it totally makes sense though. I mean, if you've never really had to go through that and you've lived the life that you've lived, then all of a sudden you have to. I get it. I totally get it. I mean, I get it because it's all I've ever known. So like, I can only imagine if I was in your shoes, all of a sudden I just found out today that, you know, I was going to go through something like that. It would be fucking awful.
Totally.
It would suck.
But also, the thing that my job does give me is a proper perspective about what matters. Like, I'm not going
Yeah.
to die. And I have so many, you know, I've been so lucky in a million ways. So, I mean, I really do think that I've been 5 out of 100,000 lucky in so many aspects of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel like it's unfair. I'm not railing against it or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I really have a big perspective about, you know, if I live with a fucked up face the rest of my life, I had 64 good years.
Yeah.
That is, you know,
Yeah.
which is I feel grateful for. And, you know, I'm 64. It's not like I'm pulling all the time.
Yeah.
So
Not all the time, but when you're on Sick
Every
Boy
now and then.
podcast, you're pulling.
Well, how do you think that do you think that this experience will have any sort of effect on your creative process, or like, you know, future writing or future sort of potential books?
I don't know, because, you know, from the perspective point of view, I kind of realize it's not such a big deal. It's really quite a small deal. So I don't know if it's
Right.
kind of worthy of it. I mean, what's certainly true is that when I'm interviewing people for the podcast or working with clients, many more of my emotions are right on the surface right now. I'm definitely much less protected.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a good thing, as long as I don't kind of expect them to sort of look after me.
Mm.
And whether it changes me, I think you can't have something like this and not be changed. But I don't know how that will.
Yeah.
I don't know how that
Too
will
soon to tell.
unfold. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I got to say it, you know, you are the same Julia that we remembered the last time we had you on, and the time before that, and the time before that. I mean, you're an absolute gem of a human, and we love
Thank you.
having conversations with you and love hearing just the way that your mind works and the way that you think about things, and especially in this perspective that's unique to you, but not so unique to so many of our listeners.
Exactly.
I think you've said a lot of things that like are just like all your previous appearances on the show are going to be extraordinarily helpful for a lot of people that are listening. So we really appreciate
Oh,
you for all of those reasons. And you know what? I want to tell you this. I want to tell you this because I thought about you immediately when it happened, and I think you'll like it. Brian Taylor and I, a couple of days ago, we were asked to speak at a school out in the valley here in Nova Scotia. So it was a couple hours, an hour or so away, and it was we don't speak to young students often. We have, but it's not often. It's usually like university students. And this was quite a broad scope. It was from grade 6, so like 11, 12-year-olds to grade 12. So like,
wow.
you know, 17,
18.
18-year-olds. And there was like over 1,000 students. So quite a
Wow,
quite a
that's a
broad
big-
scope. Yeah, very,
Yeah.
very big. And we did this like 30-minute talk. It was all about resiliency. They were doing like a mental health sort of advocacy week, and we spoke about resiliency. And near the end of our conversation or our talk, we said, you know what, we're gonna do something kind of unique here. We thought it would be really fun to record a little mini episode of the podcast. And this little mini episode, we're gonna ask if anybody out here has the courage to come up and share a moment in their life where they felt like they had to kind of tap into their resiliency. And we had quite a number of kids put their hands up, and we picked out this
brave.
young boy named Xander.
Yeah.
And he was in the front row. So he came up, he was in grade 6. He was one of the youngest people in this crowd. And we had this, he was very smart, very clever, very funny. And we had this, you know, brief conversation. And at one point I asked Xander, I said, hey, okay, so let's talk about, you know, when you see someone in your life who's struggling and and they're having a hard time finding their sense of resiliency. Let's use the example. Say you had a friend who like lost someone close to them, like a family member, and they're really struggling. They're really sad. What would you do to be there for them? And Xander said, he very thoughtfully went, well, I don't know. I guess I would just be with them. Yeah, I'd try to be with them. I'd one up their one down. And I was like, oh my God, that is the most
Amazing.
genius like turn of phrase. I'll one up their one down. And when he said it, I was like, I feel like that's something that Julia would really enjoy.
I do.
So
Genius
Xander,
in the what amazing. That's incredible.
yeah, so sweet.
Like a little Dalai Lama.
That's it.
Yeah,
Except,
the wisdom.
Except we spoke with Johan Hari last week, and
About his Zempic.
yes, and he had
He had some choice words for the Dalai Lama.
He had some choice words about the Dalai Lama. And if you haven't heard that story, Julia, I would suggest immediately just googling Johan Hari Dalai Lama, and you will have a
good time.
Very hard chuckle.
Yeah. Julia, how can people find you? How can people, I mean, you can find her books everywhere, but how can people find you and stay up to date with the work that you're doing?
So I'm at, my Instagram is at Julia Samuel MBE. I have a website, which is www.juliasamuel.co.uk, but no one looks at websites anymore, do they? But anyhow, I have a website. And I have a newish podcast. We're starting season 6 called the Therapy Works podcast, which I talk to well-known voices and unheard voices. I think very like you, but also my 2 therapist daughters come on and give me a hard time, take the piss out of me, which is really great. I do think in resiliency, dark humor, any kind of humor, not laughing at but laughing with, is probably the golden key, don't you? I mean,
Totally,
absolutely,
100%.
100%. Yeah.
God, Julia, I just love to. I just like. I genuinely. I know that Jared said this already, but like, it's like, I just love sitting down. Like, just seeing your name on the schedule this week from Monday is
always
like
a delight.
Is like, oh, we get to
This
just
is our
hang.
treat.
We just get to hang out with Julia.
Brian literally was supposed to go in for surgery, and he just busted out of the hospital because he was like, "There's no fucking way I'm missing
I was like, I'm not
this."
missing this.
It's an
you better go back and get your unbroken leg broken so you can have the surgery.
Julia, much like you, I fucking hate being a patient.
Well, Julia,
Thank you.
thank you. This has been such a delight,
love to
and
see you.
I look forward to having you on again sometime soon in the future. All right, folks. Man, I love Dr. Julia Samuel, and I will say, in the very least, Dr. Samuel, you look badass with an eye patch. I got to tell you. Okay, so now it's time for part 2 of this special 2-part episode of our deep dive into shingles. We're going to chat with, again, Dr. Jia Hu, a public health expert who's going to give us the lowdown on shingles from a medical perspective. Now, Dr. Hu is not just a wealth of knowledge about the virus. He's also a part of 19 to 0, which is an initiative promoting preventative health behaviors. So get ready, put your science hat on for some science talk, mixed with a bunch of practical advice on keeping yourself and ourselves and our communities healthy. So without further ado, let's jump right in with Dr. Hu.
There you go, all together.
All together. Okay, so this is going to be interesting. I'm putting on my ready to learn hat.
Oh yeah,
that's what this hat. That's actually what this hat is. It's ready to learn, and it's what I work out in. So it's got like salt stains on it.
Ready to learn and sweat,
and it's ready to be cleaned. But I'm ready to learn about shingles, and here's why I want to know everything there is to know about shingles. I know. Here's what I know so far. I know.
You said I know so many times that I feel like you don't know very much.
I know that shingles are dangerous. Because when I was about 3 years old, I was playing Frisbee with a shingle, and this kid threw it. It sliced my eye right here. I almost lost my eye. I bled everywhere. It was a harrowing event, and so this is one of the reasons why I want to dive into shingles. And just looking at my notes here, fuck. Okay, no, yeah, we're not talking about roof shingles. We are talking about the shingles virus. Okay, so off
All
to a
right.
great start. We are joined today by
Calling it
Dr.
audible.
yeah. Dr. Jia Hu, who is a family physician, a public health advocate, and the co-founder of 19 to 0. We'll be talking about that in a little bit. All the way from Calgary. Dr. Hu, thank you so much for joining us today. I guess before we dive into it, take a moment, introduce yourself to the two of us, to all of our listeners. Who is Dr. Hu?
Who is Doctor Who indeed? Pretty funny story about the shingles. I'm glad you didn't lose your eye there. That does sound harrowing for you and for your parents. So
Core
anyways,
memories, indeed.
yeah, totally. Well, I'm Jia, a public health doctor and a family doctor, based in Alberta. One thing that I spend a lot of my time thinking about is vaccines and trying to get more people vaccinated. And
Hard thing to do out in Calgary, isn't it?
Yeah. Hard to do across the country. No, it's true. Where are you
Shots
two?
fired.
I know.
We're in
I know.
we're in Halifax. Hey, it's the fucking
yeah,
same
yeah.
over here. It's the same everywhere you look.
But yes, maybe sometimes harder to do in the West than in the Far East where you guys are. So, yeah, and I don't know what should I say about myself.
Well, I got a question. What was the impetus to getting into medicine?
I think I was always really interested in public health. How do we sort of work on improving the health of populations? I mean, I do see patients once in a while, but I mostly spend my time doing public health things. I think both are really important. And, with vaccination, that's a really good example of something that you kind of want a lot of people to do. And there's certain things and policies that can get more people to get vaccinated. But I do think that fundamentally, being able to sort of shift things at a societal and population level. It all sounds very grandiose, really. I don't know if I actually do that, but that's fundamentally why I was interested in medicine and eventually public health medicine.
How did you I know that this isn't really the thing that we're here to talk about, but on the public health side, what is the difference between what somebody might perceive as the environment around vaccination from a population level versus like what you see from the public health side? Like, has it changed over the last few years with, all the conversations after the COVID vaccine and how that's sort of like, it seems like from the public perception, from my perception, that things have changed. Has it actually changed from your side, from the public health side?
Yeah, I'd say so. You know what? I think before the pandemic, if we're talking about sort of vaccine hesitancy or the willingness or lack thereof to get vaccines, right before the pandemic, we had some concerns about it, right? But around measles especially. But I think with COVID, there was a real mobilization of misinformation and sort of craziness. I think that was tied to a lot of political factors as well, and sort of a more general rise in misinformation, that we see across a number of things. And so for sure that's affected everything, but we are sort of seeing declines in immunization rates sort of around the world, declines in Canada. Maybe it hasn't declined as much as people think. I do think that it hasn't sort of gone to the basement yet, but we have seen big decreases actually, and it's hard to get those back. And so I think that's something that people who work in the field worry about. And that's that's something we're going to have to sort of our field, I think, in sort of other fields that sort of get politicized, have to contend with.
Yeah. Well, so to that point, then this is interesting. So a little fact: there was a new survey that states that that reveals that Canadians there's a significant amount of misconceptions around shingles, despite the fact that 82% of Canadians say that they are actually familiar with the shingles virus. I'm going to ask you, Tay. 8 in 10 Canadians say that they're familiar with the virus. Would you be one of those 8 or one of the 2 that says that you're not?
I would be in the 8. Although then the follow-up question would be like, how familiar are you with it? Like, what do you actually know about it? I would say that my familiarity starts with, I've heard of it. I know the name very well. I think I have a probably incorrect preconceived notion that it has some tie to the chickenpox, whatever the chickenpox virus is. I don't know if that's correct. And then I
That's
also know that is correct. Okay, wonderful.
That is
Off to a
correct, yes.
Wonderful start. And I also am aware of some of the potential ramifications of if you get shingles and it gets into your spinal cord. I know that there can be some nerve damage that can
Okay.
happen.
All right.
and
All
stuff
right.
like
So
that.
so you know some stuff. That's good. All right. So I'm gonna jump in here. I'm gonna say I'm one of the.
You're right. So I'm too informed. Is what you're saying.
Yeah,
I need to shut the
you know
fuck
what? We might as well just have not had Doctor Who join us and just ask you all the fucking
You
questions.
sound pretty informed. You sound pretty informed.
Well, you know what? I don't feel very informed, so I guess that's the mark of what we want to see. People who know and don't think they do.
I'm gonna be humble here and say that I would be one of the 2 out of the 10 Canadians that says that I am not familiar with the shingles virus. I did know the chickenpox bit.
Okay.
But that's and I know about the link between Ramsey Hunt and shingles if you get shingles near the nerve
Yes.
within the face. But that's about it. So Doctor Who, I want to ask you, maybe you can quiz us a little bit here on some stats around shingles or some misconceptions around shingles to see how much we actually may or may not know.
Oh wow, a quiz. Okay, I never do that. That's okay.
On the spot.
Wow.
Now
okay.
we're gonna now this was actually a trick because I'm trying to see how much Doctor Who actually knows about shingles.
Well, exactly.
Because he has to know a lot to be able to quiz us.
I know, and I need to think of some decent questions to ask, and that's oh my lord. Okay. All right, we'll start with an easy. Who famously got Ramsey Hunt syndrome in
Justin
recent
Bieber.
history? And is that why you know about Ramsey Hunt syndrome?
We talked to
no,
somebody.
we actually had someone on the podcast.
Yeah, we had somebody on
prior.
the podcast who had
so
Ramsey Hunt.
when Biebs got it, and actually I was eating some Bimbits or whatever the fuck they're called.
Of course you were.
Yes.
When I found out the news, I said, "Hey, I know about that," because we spoke to a person on the podcast.
What a great story.
Bimbits, Jesus Christ. So yes, Justin Bieber.
Okay, there you go. I mean, I'm impressed that you met somebody else who had it, right? Versus just, you know, I think when Justin Bieber had to cancel his tour, people were like, "What does he have exactly?" You know,
Yeah,
and that was,
yeah.
that was. I mean, that's pretty not very common in young people that period. Okay, here's a question: how many Canadians will develop shingles in their life?
Ooh.
What's your lifetime risk?
Like percentage.
Yeah, or
percentage-wise?
you know, one in 100, one in
Yeah.
2,
Okay.
one in
Okay.
1,000.
Man,
Or should
I
I
mean,
give
like
you-
I'm pretty like I know via having parents and knowing that they're thinking about the shingles vaccine a lot and like hearing a lot about the shingles vaccine for like the older population. I know that it's taken quite seriously, so I'm going to
Yeah.
go with I'm going to go with 1 in 10.
Okay. I'm gonna say
10%? Ooh. No.
Are-
Okay,
are-
I'm going to go 1 in 20.
all right. I'm gonna get. I'm gonna throw a Hail Mary here. I'm gonna say, today 365 Canadians are gonna be told that they have shingles.
Oh, okay. So you just went with a different metric entirely.
Totally. How
Wow,
close was I?
I need to convert that now. If 365 Canadians get shingles every day over the course of their lifetime, oh my lord!
I bet you might be surprised.
No, that could be.
I'm looking at a stat right now that says each
Yeah.
year 130,000 Canadians are diagnosed with shingles, with 17,000 reports of
What?
post-therapeutic neuralgia and 20 deaths. That means today 356 Canadians will be told
Oh, he
they have
cheated.
shingles. I did cheat. Fuck it. Whatever. I would have said. I don't know what I would have said.
Oh,
'cause
well,
I have
convert
no
this
idea.
for us now. What's
Yeah.
the one in however many number?
That's pretty. Wow, good math, by the way. I was like, oh, you not only did you know that, like, what 175 divided 265 days, but it's about 1 in 3 Canadians who are
1
over
in
50.
3. Whoa.
I mean, and most people make it to 50 actually, so 1 in 3. So it's really quite common.
Wow.
I think that's something that surprises people. So it's really common. I mean, post-traumatic neuralgia, not as common as you showed from your stats, and Ramsey Hunt and some of the really severe complications, not as common, but certainly more common than people often think it is. So that's sort of one thing about shingles.
Well, let me ask. So the tie-in with chickenpox
Yeah.
and shingles,
Yeah.
because I feel like every fucker's gotten chickenpox at some point in their life. Like, I mean,
And also the thing around chickenpox is like, hey, you got chickenpox, you're good. Like you're not gonna get it. You're not gonna get it again. But so
what is the chickenpox shingles
Yes.
link? Like, what is that? How does that work?
Yeah. Good question. So chickenpox virus, as you pointed out earlier, and when you get it as a kid, you get the rash, and then it kind of goes away, and and basically. What happens is the rash doesn't entirely go away. It sort of goes to sleep in your nerves. So it remains dormant in some of your nerves. And that's why it sort of affects the nervous system. And then, sometime later on in life, it reactivates and then it gives you shingles, which can manifest in a lot of different ways. But it really is a reactivation of chickenpox. So if you never had chickenpox, then you can't get shingles either. And I think everybody of a certain age in this country has had chickenpox. Probably not everybody. They started immunizing kids against chickenpox, I think, in the early 2000s. And so some of those kids might not have it. So it's we'll see what happens with them and shingles. But you're right. For all adults, all adults probably have been exposed, had chickenpox, and therefore at risk of shingles.
Okay, so the 1 in 3 isn't that wild when you think about it, right?
Because it's like everybody, unless you are immunized against chickenpox,
has a chance,
is likely to be at risk of developing it
right?
because of their exposure to chickenpox.
Fascinating.
What is the thing? How does something like this chickenpox virus that's laying dormant in your nervous system become reactivated?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if there's sort of a specific, like essentially kind of what happens is as we get older and as our sort of immune system weakens a little bit, and we talk about that a little bit as well. It's kind of suppressing the virus a little bit, right? And then, I think that at some point it loses the ability. We lose the ability to suppress, and then it kind of flares up, and that's what sort of causes the shingles sort of flare later on in life. Just based on a few things I said there, it is more common the older you get, which doesn't mean young people can't get it, right? Like we've seen young people get shingles. It seems more and more in the news, at least. And of course, if your immune system is weaker, if you're sort of on certain medications or if you have certain conditions, you're more likely to have a flare or a reactivation. I shouldn't call them flares. That's not the right word, but you're more likely to have shingles earlier on.
Right.
And what is? I mean, that's an interesting thing that you brought up. The kind of natural decline of the immune system as we get older. Like, what is? I know the immune system is like possibly the most complicated thing in human biology, physiology. What do we know about the immune system, and does it is it on a trajectory that we can? Is it on a downward trajectory no matter what, and we can only do things to try and slow the downward trajectory of our immune system as we get older, or can we keep it at this like high level with certain interventions, or like keep it propped up, as long as we maintain interventions like the lifestyle stuff, exercise, diet, sleep habits, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean that's a really
Not
really
getting
good
sick
question.
with something horrific.
Yeah. I think that, at the end of the day, as you say, the immune system is super, super complex. It does weaken with age. It doesn't necessarily weaken with everything. Some things the immune system is better responding to than others, right? Measles, good example of something that, well, I mean, you kind of have lifelong immunity to that. So it depends on the immune system itself. It depends on sort of the pathogen the immune system is fighting. I don't think we have a magic pill to keep the immune system generally strong, unfortunately. And so it's kind of all that stuff you mentioned, right? Like I think generally speaking, somebody who's healthier in terms of what they eat, healthier in terms of sort of the activity they do, healthier in terms of, getting good sleep, that on average is going to be overall healthier and overall have sort of a better immune system. But I also don't want to, it's probably a little more complex than that because, I don't want to say that those things are directly linked with a stronger immune system, which means you don't need vaccines or antibiotics. It doesn't quite work like that. We do know there are things that'll directly weaken the immune system, right? Lots of drugs target it nowadays because of, autoimmune things. Unfortunately, I don't think we've invented anything that just makes the immune system generally stronger. So I think what we can do is just try to stay generally healthy through sort of all the things that, you're alluding to.
Acai berries.
I remember
That's what I
somebody
heard.
saying something.
Blueberries.
I remember I read
Not
somewhere.
going on a giant tour 365 days a year doing amazing pop music. And
Yes.
selling
Not getting
tickets.
drunk every night 365 days. That's what you're going to
That's
say.
right,
Not
that's
going
right,
to go on a
that's right.
bender every night. But
We're talking about a special somebody that's right from right here in Canada. You know, I read somewhere, I can't remember where it was from. I remember thinking this is a reputable thing, so I'm not just spouting bullshit. But it was something along the lines of like, you know, we know more about the like depths of space than we do about the bottom of the ocean, and we know more about the bottom of the ocean than we know about the immune system. Like it was just this way of putting into context like the complexity of the immune system and all the things that we don't yet know about, like really what's going on with our immune system in like in like a comprehensive way to be able to explain it, like in order to even be able to think about something like a magic pill that, you know, boosts up your immune system, like you were saying, like that thing doesn't exist, and it doesn't exist because there's just so much about it that we don't yet understand and able to start on something like that.
Well, I do have a question that we probably do have the answer to. Talking about chickenpox, talking about shingles, and the link between the two. Chickenpox, from what I remember, chickenpox was like super contagious. Like, you know, don't go to school when you had chickenpox because you're just going to give it to all your classmates. Shingles, sort of a woken version of chickenpox. Is shingles contagious like chickenpox is?
Yeah, no, is that for me or for Tay?
You know, I'll ask you, Tay.
Good question.
Yeah,
Good
yeah. What do
question.
you think? Do you think shingles is because chickenpox is super contagious? Do you think shingles is contagious? Considering it's chickenpox after it's taken a nice nap.
Whoa, that's a very good question. I mean, like, half my brain wants to say no and half wants to say yes. I mean, that's just because I'm not sure. So I'm gonna go with no.
All right. Dr.
No,
Hu?
yeah, you're absolutely right. Yes,
Hell
the
yeah.
answer is no. Sorry, that's confusing. But yeah, it's chickenpox is, I mean, shingles is not contagious, which is good. It's good. Yeah. It's not. But you're right. Chickenpox is super. It's one of the few airborne things there are. But you know, we're good with shingles, at least from a sort of a contagion perspective. So if you haven't had the chickenpox, you're not going to get the shingles. So
I mean, like we're talking about shingles, and what is shingles? Like, if I had shingles today, what am I looking at? Like, how am I going to know? What are the sort of telltale signs that, like, oh, you've got shingles?
Yeah, so I think the classic, you know, telltale sign of shingles is kind of a rash that's in a linear distribution. So it's kind of on a line because it follows something called a dermatome. Which is sort of an area of your skin. Oh gosh, I'm using too much jargon. That's linked to like a nerve, right? Because it reactivates in a particular nerve area, and so it sort of follows a pattern. Usually, before you get the rash, you know, you're gonna sort of have often some, you know, weird symptoms like tingling or even like electric pain. And then you get the rash that happens, right? And you know, it's very sort of special sign is it does happen to be in a lot. Most rashes kind of all over your body, right? Like, you know, they're not just like in a linear pattern, and that's kind of it, you know, the what makes people think you have shingles. And the rash itself, it's kind of, you know, itchy, red, got blisters, and it can sort of last for, you know, a week up to 4 weeks, and then during that time it's usually pretty painful. And so people sometimes need to take stuff for it. And then after, you know, usually for many people, the rash sort of goes away, and then you can still get shingles again if you've had it once. And you can get some of the other things like postherpetic neuralgia. But that's sort of, and then there's some of the complicated stuff, but you know, that's sort of shingles in a nutshell.
Okay. Now in hearing that if you get, you know, you have shingles, you get a rash, it's painful, it's a real pain in the ass for a couple of weeks. When we're talking about something like Ramsey Hunt, for folks who aren't familiar, one of the symptoms of Ramsey Hunt is having like Bell's palsy in your face. So like your face droops on one side. You can't, like, you know, you lose sort of the function of your face. You can't blink. You can't it's like you went to the dentist and the dentist just went haywire with jabbing you, numbing your entire face.
I actually know another person that had Ramsey Hunt about 10 years ago, and he was a young guy as well. Like, he at the time, he probably would have been like in his late 20s, maybe 30.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, if that's the case, or like, looking at Justin Bieber or looking at, any of these people, is Ramsey Hunt similar to shingles in that it's it hits you, it lasts for a few weeks, and then it sort of resolves on its own? Or is that damage that's done to the nerves in the face, like, is that sort of permanent? Like, what goes on there?
And just to be clear, like as a sub question, that is Ramsey Hunt, like, is shingles absolutely necessary in order? Does Ramsey Hunt never occur without shingles?
Yes. So that I'm going to answer that. And yes, shingles does not occur without, Ramsey Hunt does not occur without shingles.
Okay.
Because again, it's all kind of where, the shingle virus sort of reactivates, right? Usually it sort of reactivates sort of on your torso, like a nerve on your torso. And, it gives you sort of the skin rash, right? In Ramsey Hunt, the virus reactivates in something called your facial nerve. And your facial nerve, I mean, you can imagine, is in your face. And, it does a lot of things. It controls a lot of your facial muscles, and that's kind of where it gives you sort of the Bell's palsy, where half your face is drooping. And, it sort of controls some of your muscles in your throat. It does a lot of stuff, actually, right? And, might make you hoarse or might give you some trouble swallowing. It may make it hard to sort of hear in your ear sometimes. You can have hearing loss from Ramsey Hunt. I mean, with Ramsey Hunt, I mean, you do want to, you generally want to always treat shingles, but you really, really want to treat Ramsey Hunt, and you'll use some treatments that are a bit more intense than what we sort of normally treat shingles with. And, some people can have residual deficits, right? They can sort of have some permanent nerve damage from Ramsey Hunt. If it's not sort of treated quickly enough, or if it's not treated appropriately enough. And so, yeah, that, again, and I don't want people thinking that they're all going to get Ramsey Hunt now, which sounds pretty terrifying, but yeah, that is one of the very severe, much more severe complications of shingles. Kind of like the spinal cord thing, Tay was mentioning, right? Like, once in a while you get something really bad happening with shingles.
Right. Maybe that's a good way to put the fear of God into people to get those vaccines. Just say Ramsey Hunt's going to get you. If you don't get the jab.
For anybody who said fear mongering doesn't work.
Speaking of the jab, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say it does. No, I do think fear mongering does. I do think something, one thing that drives people's willingness to get a vaccine is how worried they are about the disease. I do think that when it comes to sort of shingles vaccine and whether or not people get it, yeah, for a lot of things, I think there's sort of misinformation, like COVID, lots of misinformation. For things like shingles, I think it's more just lack of awareness, right? Like, I don't think there's sort of online communities talking about how shingles vaccines, filled with Bill Gates microchips and they're going to, poison your soul and all those things, right? And I do think, that distinction and maybe, that's sort of important when we try to understand what drives people to get vaccinated or not. Sometimes it's the sort of the fake news stuff that gets people away from it. Sometimes people just don't know, right? And I think a lot of the diseases fall in the I don't really know much about them category. And that's, probably a bit better than the I am completely misinformed because I've been reading too much Facebook about a category.
And is the reason, like, is the drive for vaccination for shingles or the reason for treatment if you do get shingles, is the reasoning for treatment and the reason for vaccination, other than, shingles obviously not being like a super comfortable experience to go through, is it because is the purpose of that drive to vaccinate and to treat because of the unlikely but potential kind of add-ons like Ramsey Hunt that can occur if you get shingles?
Yeah, like Ramsey Hunt, or like post-herpetic neuralgia, which is a more common add-on that you sort of talked about. That's sort of just like chronic, I said that usually shingles goes away in 4 weeks, right, or something. With post-herpetic neuralgia, you can chronic pain for years, right? And that chronic pain is very hard to treat. You tend to need to use a whole bunch of different medications, including sort of anti-seizure medications, anticonvulsants, it's hard to treat. And yeah, I mean, I do think that shingles itself is very unpleasant and sort of worth getting vaccinated for. I certainly think, post-herpetic neuralgia, far more unpleasant, can last forever. And a bit more common than Ramsey Hunt, right? Like, I, of
Mhm.
course, don't want that either. But, I think that stuff leads to a lot of, long-term disability, discomfort.
Mhm. I mean, speaking of trying to advocate for more awareness around vaccines and, dispelling the myths and the misconceptions and the disinformation that's kind of out and about. Tell us a bit about 19 to 0. What is 19 to 0? How did that start? And like, what's the goal? What's the mission there?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, 19 to 0 is something sort of I started with a few people um, uh, uh, during the pandemic. Actually, I think sort of before vaccines were available, and I was like, okay, I think we might have a problem with sort of getting people vaccinated, or at least we need to sort of educate people around vaccination. And I think initially it was really focused on COVID vaccines, and so, initially we were trying to do sort of large marketing campaigns. Like there was this thing called "This Is Your Shot" that we sort of worked a lot with. We also did a lot of work with different community organizations because, I think that it was really important that, I think trust is a big driver of, willingness to get vaccinated or willingness to do anything, frankly, from a medical perspective. And so we did a lot of work with, newcomer communities, and yeah, it was really fun actually. And I didn't actually sort of expect that there would be so much misinformation around back like
Mm,
COVID back like it was kind of a bit unfortunate. And sort of since the pandemic has sort of wound down, we've sort of continued on to sort of other areas, other vaccines, and even some other health behaviors like cancer screening. But sort of at the core of what we try to do is we sort of try to promote good public health and preventative behaviors, through behavior change things like marketing and community engagement and education, and so it's been fun. It's been a fun little ride actually, and I do think we need more of that in healthcare, right? I'm always
mm,
thinking about how much effort and money, McDonald's. I do love McDonald's once in a while. Spends into marketing their burgers,
Totally.
but
mhm,
I'm like,
mhm.
oh man, like we don't spend that much. We don't have those resources in public health to do that, and I think we should try harder a little bit.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. My partner's a public health nurse, and it's astounding to
oh,
me the amount of layers that public health has within it. Like it's just the from from you know sexually transmitted diseases to vaccinations to like I mean coming off of COVID and everything that you guys had to focus on through that, and just the public awareness aspect of what's going on in the community. Like it really is just astounding the amount of work that goes into public health in general.
Hmm.
And
There's a lot to know.
it's fascinating.
I
It's
mean, and
absolutely
we work
fucking
in
fascinating.
we like we spend a lot of time paying attention
Hmm.
to the health world, and there's a lot of stuff that we don't know,
Yeah,
which speaks to the need for dollars towards
that's it. Yeah, yeah.
marketing campaigns for public health.
This has been a really, really great conversation, Doctor Who. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to sit down and give us some insights into shingles and everything that comes with it, and of course your work with 19 to 0. If anybody's kind of curious about what you guys are up to and the research behind 19 to 0, how can they find you and stay up to date with that?
oh yeah, you could just visit our website, www.19to0.ca. I mean, our website probably could be better, but it is 19to0.ca. The number 19 and then TOZERO.ca.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much. This has been a real treat. Well, there you have it, folks. That's it. That's all. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for joining us on this special 2-part episode. Big thank you to our guests. And big thank you to Donovan Morgan for all the sound design. Big shout out to Jeff Lonis, our manager. Another shout out to Brian and Taylor for doing the show with me and every single week. So much fun. And hey, if you have a story about an experience with shingles, or maybe you are somebody who wants to be on the podcast who has something that has nothing to do with shingles whatsoever, you can Send us an email if you have a note. Letters at sickboypodcast.com. If you want to be a guest on the show, you can go to sickboypodcast.com and look around somewhere and find a be a guest button. Click that, and then probably a form to fill out, a whole bunch of stuff. You do that, and then you get on the show. So we would love to have you. And hey, supporting the podcast. I mean, you're doing it right now by listening, but if you want to do it even further, come on over to our Discord. It's absolutely free of charge. A beautiful community of folks over there. We're having lovely conversations. And of course, make sure you like, subscribe, all that stuff, whatever, any kind of interaction buttons that are on the podcast app, just do it and tell somebody you love about the show. Okay, that is it for this week. Thank you so much. And we'll see you again next week. My name is Jeremy, and this is Sick Boy.